Hello, everybody. Welcome to the MagneZONE. I'm Cossack11, and with me today, as always, we have Clutch,
Hello.
Sam,
How's it going?
What's up?
and Omega's back with us.
I'm back.
Yay!
Hello.
So Pat couldn't join us this week. He had road issues, potholes. Man, they're killer. So we got some good topics lined up today. We got some interesting stuff going on in the RDL. We've got just a lot to talk about with possible season 3 discussions, but we'll get to that towards the end. What we want to talk about now is battle prep and prepping for your battles each week in a draft league, because it does involve a lot of planning, and it involves a different sort of planning than what you would do for ladders in Showdown or something of that nature. So we'll have actually, because Omega was doing some team prep before the podcast started, we'll go straight to him. Omega, give your thoughts on team prep.
Going to me on team prep here.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I think I'd ask the question, like, where would you start? Like,
Yeah,
where's your
yeah.
starting point every week?
Start with your biggest team weakness. Because right now I'm
Right.
actually prepping for my week 12 match. What you got to do, what I do is just look at the team. What's the biggest threat to your team, and what do you have for it?
That's a good way to start, definitely.
I like to start the opposite way.
Well, and that's the thing with team building, is there isn't really a right way to do it. So honestly, we're kind of like, there's some pitfalls that you do need to avoid, though. The first one is you have to acknowledge that the other team might bring a weird set, and there's nothing you can do about it, because trying to plan for every single possible set against your team you can't do it. You will drive yourself to
Sometimes
insanity.
You cannot prep for every single heat possible set. Like, what if they ran some physical cryogonal and I didn't have anything for physical cryogonal?
Like,
I swept my team.
What if they ran like facade flame orb salamence? Like,
You just
comes
don't
up
prep-
every
you
week.
can't prep
Just you
all
wait
the
for Flame Orb Cryogonal. Flame Orb Facade Cryogonal.
There you go.
The attack is going to skyrocket.
there you go. That's the way to do it. See, yeah. So there's
Plate
like,
Man is on my team.
you're gonna have to just live with the fact that you won't be able to plan for those. So what you got to do, though, is you do have to plan for the most obvious threats to your team, because if you don't, you're gonna get burned by those most obvious threats, and you'll be kicking yourself for another 2 weeks after that. Yeah. So, after that, and a lot of those weird sets come up for a reason. The reason those weird sets come up is because people will be planning for your team, and they'll see that they have a crippling weakness to a certain mon on your team, and they'll have to plan a weird set in order to cover it, because it's just sometimes you gotta just make do with what you got. Sometimes you gotta jank it up and hope the glue sticks.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that's important to note here is that it is, I think, more important first to figure out your plan than to try and figure
Right.
out somebody else's plan.
Yeah.
You have to ask. I think it's best to ask the questions and let them ask you the questions. Because
Yeah.
if you let them ask the questions, you're gonna lose every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I'll go over kind of what my process is for team prep, or what it is now. And it's part of the reason I won against Kennesaw. And it's because what I did is I took both our rosters, and I went through and I divided my roster into defensive mons and offensive mons, just broadly. So stuff like Chansey, Amoonguss, Alomomola obviously are defensive mons. And like my offensive mons were like Latias, Volcarona, Sharpedo. And what I did is I would take one of my mons, so I'd take like Chansey, and I'd run damage calcs for her entire team with their offensive stats for their best offensive stat and their most powerful moves against my Chansey, and ran damage calcs for all of that. And I put them under categories of wall or doesn't wall. And
Nice.
I did that
I
for
feel
all
like
of
you
my
would have both those categories. I wall everything.
Well, Chansey kind of does wall everything. And so I I did that for all of my defensive mons, and then I went through with all my offensive mons, and I did damage calcs based on speed and my opponent having max speed with like choice scarf and that kind of thing. And basically I went through and did check or doesn't check. And then what I did is I built my team based on I did my team based on like I built my team based on, okay, what are my 3 best walls against her team, and what are my 3 best checks against her team, and built that way. So I had Gliscor, because Gliscor is in this weird category where Gliscor can act as a check and as a wall. So Gliscor made it onto the team because of that reason, because it's Gliscor.
Choice banded Gliscor is no joke.
I didn't even choice band. I had I was just running. I ran Toxic Orb on Gliscor for that week because I wanted.
Did you battle her before or after she had Komo-o?
I battled her after she had Komo-o. Komo-o was one of the big things I was worried about.
And it did hurt you.
It did. I didn't anticipate her running physical Komo-o against me, and it almost backfired on me because she had Assault Vest on it. So she tanked my Draco Meteor. For the second week in a row, Latios's Draco Meteor gets tanked by a dragon, and then that dragon turns
on that thing and not care.
Or a dragon scale.
Well, I needed. It actually turns out I needed the scarfs on it because I put scarf.
Garchomp?
No, not because of Garchomp, because she didn't run Scarf Garchomp. I don't even think she ran Garchomp against me.
She didn't even run Garchomp that week, I'm pretty sure.
No, she ran Tornadus, though, and Tornadus can outspeed Latios without a Choice Scarf. So I needed Choice Scarf Latios to even have a chance of outspeeding the Tornadus. And I don't have a lot on my team that can deal with Tornadoes. And this is what we were going with earlier when we were talking about, your biggest threat. And sometimes your biggest threat isn't necessarily what can do the most damage to you. It's what do you not have any counters for. And I had nothing for Tornadus except Ice Beam on my Latios. And then I also put Ice Beam on my Quagsire, which isn't it's uncommon, but it's not unheard of.
Yeah, exactly.
But it ended up working very well for me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that a general good process here, and this is similar to what you did.
Mm-hmm.
As a general rule, the first thing I do prepping for a battle is I write down all of my opponent's Pokemon. I write down their base speed, put a little notch next to it, and write down everything I have that I think can take care of it.
Right.
And I'm going to define
Speed's
take
a
care
great
of
place
as
to start.
Yeah, and it's a great starting point because first off, you've got the base speed right there. You can start to look at it and figure out, all right, well, what do I need to outspeed this thing? What do I need to be faster than it if I'm going to check it? And I think that also, another important thing to talk about is ideally, depending on how your team's built, you should have 1 or 2 things that have versatility defensively or offensively. I mean, for me, it's the Bulutran core, which can be run, very defensively or very offensively.
Right, and it does go back a little bit to what we talked about last week when you're drafting your team, having brackets of speed tiers. Like there's a sweet spot. Yeah,
for sure. And so, what I do is, I just write down here's their 11 mons. What are like, if I look over the whole list of them and what I've written down is things that answer those Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any unifying trends? Is there one Pokemon that comes up on like 6? That thing's coming, Another thought though is that I want to hop in and say this is a common team building pitfall. I think there are kind of a unifying set. One of them is identifying a counter to your team or something that gives your team trouble and only running 1 check for it.
Right.
Which is a problem, especially like for me, like my team relies often defensively fairly heavily on Rotom Wash. But I have to make sure that Rotom Wash has backup, that I have other switch-ins because without the reliable recovery and with it being kind of slower than a lot of things that threaten it, it can't bear the defensive burden alone.
Right, and that's actually that comes down to a couple of things. Having either it's a lot of that is good cores. If you drafted good cores, this is going to be a lot easier for you to do. Like, because I have good defensive cores. Because like when I was planning for Nadia's team, Chansey walls everything, but trying to force Chansey to wall everything is unrealistic. It's gonna get worn down too quickly if I do that. But Amoonguss walls a couple things really, really well. It walled Superior, for example, and it did an excellent job of walling Superior.
Oh yeah.
And Quagsire walls Superior as well. No, it doesn't. No, not Superior. No. Why did I say Superior? It walled no, I meant
that
to
was
say
me zoning out too.
Yeah. Whoa, sorry, my brain just like died for a
I
second
was
there.
thinking, in
Yeah,
what
it walls.
world does Bill wall Superior?
Yeah, well, that quad grass weakness. That's
Swampert is a great
overblown.
Mega Venusaur.
Maybe if it locks itself into HP Fire with a spec set.
Or I guess HP Electric.
Not
is
even.
better.
Yeah, maybe if it learned Flame Punch.
Well, and I think another one to kind of hop in again as well. On the flip side of under preparing for your counters or like letting your defensive weight rest on a single Pokemon is also, I think, over preparing for threats. Like if you're running 4 Pokemon to counter one threat of the like maybe if it's the one thing that could threaten your team, that's fine. But if you're running 4 Pokemon exclusively to take care of a threat on the other side, you might be neglecting issues with, the rest of the team.
100%.
Like for me this week, the example was like I had one or two. I had one real solid check to Hydreigon, and I lost. I ran Mega Diancie, and I lost that unfortunately. But the thing was that like what I realized is that I was like I prepped hard for Celesteela. This guy, Excessive has Celesteela and Hydreigon, which is actually those two have really solid synergy. And dude, I prepped hard for Celesteela. I was able to take that thing out, but then Hydreigon absolutely messed me up. I under prepped for Hydreigon, over prepped for Celesteela, and it really like hurt me in the game itself.
I had a similar incident against Santoro with Belly Drum Slurpuff.
Oof.
My Clefable goes down, and immediately the Slurpuff comes out, Belly Drums, and sweeps the rest of my team under the rug.
Dumb cupcake puppy.
I prepped for that. That's the reason I got Lucario. I was like, I'm going to draft Lucario. If all I can do is bullet punch that Slurpuff, I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't even come
until that point. I had Hawlucha, and I think I had Salamence. The two I tossed that week. Because neither of those were any checks. I needed Steel type, and I also needed priority, so I got my Thundurus. But in terms of prepping, what I normally do, I've got an old like $40 PC. Got it on eBay a while back. I just have it as like a storage for just like files. But I just use the Internet Explorer on there. I pull up a tab for each Pokemon my opponent has. All 11 tabs. The tier 1 through the tier 5, everything they have. Go through their speed tiers and go through their abilities. Because you don't want to forget abilities.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's something to consider also.
I almost got screwed week 1 because I completely forgot about Defiant on B Sharp. I was like, oh, I'm gonna intimidate this thing. Go on Salamence, and then turn 2, gone.
Yeah, those hurt. I think that there've been a lot of cases of that, and I think that you find in draft league people utilize underutilized abilities. Like for me, going back to Slurpuff, when I played Santoro, I was running Unnerve on my Haxorus just for the event that he brought the Slurpuff. I could switch it in and keep it from getting the Unburden boost.
Right.
Like that was the only reason I brought that. And the thing is, like, it was a revelation that I had at like the last minute. Like it was a day before I played him, and I was looking over this and I was like, man, is there any way I can prep to take out Slurpuff more easily? And all of a sudden it was like, dude, I have no reason to run Mold Breaker on Haxorus this week. It doesn't benefit me that much. Why don't I just run Unnerve? It would shut that thing right down. It can't eat its citrus berry.
Yeah, 100%. It's also big to look at the defense. Are they more physically or especially defensive? I made a mistake playing against Clutch because it was like, oh, okay, I'll bring special against his Kyurem, special against his Terrakion. And then I forgot about Reuniclus. And then that thing just sat there. And nothing happened for like 3 or 4 turns. Like, hit it, recover. Hit it, recover.
How did you beat that thing again? What happened?
I think it was massive damage from Blue Flare, and I paralyzed it so it couldn't recover one turn.
Gotcha.
And that actually comes down to also EV spreads. And
yeah.
So the one thing you're going to always run into that's going to be a challenge to plan against is there are some really weird EV spreads that can do a lot of work in draft league.
Oh yeah.
A good example is actually, like, going back to Kennesaw, the Coma O was physical and ran a physical EV set with assault vest, which assault vest Coma O is not uncommon because Coma O has a lot of offensive moves. It's not, but it's uncommon enough that I didn't plan for it. But also, it's important with your EVs is when you're doing EVs, speed creep is something to keep an eye on. Which is speed. What speed creep basically is you look at your opponent's team, and you look at your team, and there's on a couple occasions there can be mons on your team. Not all the time, but there sometimes are mons on your team that are so naturally fast that they're fast enough without a max speed investment that they can still outspeed the fastest thing that your opponent can bring. And so you shouldn't put full EVs into speed. You should divert some of those to bulk because as long as you're fast enough, it's not about being the fastest, it's just being fast enough to be the fastest, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I utilized this week. Looking at my opponent's speed tiers, the fastest natural thing on excessive side was an Espeon that was base 110, which matches my Lycanroc Dusk and my Mega Diancie. But after that, everything was, I think there were a couple base 105s. He had a Mega Pinsir, which clocks in at 105. And I ended up speed teching mostly to beat Mega Pinsir. I wasn't too worried about Espeon.
Right, because Espeon, while a potential threat once Calm Mind goes up, isn't really used frequently as an offensive threat.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it has options, but most of its coverage is going to be in like hidden powers, and you can only run one hidden power, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, my thought was, well, if I can. And I think another thing on speed control, actually, to completely divert for a second, is that I think another mistake people make in building is underestimating the value of scarfing a fast Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And this week, I ended up running Scarf Lycanroc. And I think that, I mean, one coach I sent the team off to evaluate looked at it and was like, well, why are you scarfing this thing? It's going to, outspeed his whole team. And I was like, well, that's the point, right? Because the reason you scarf a fast Pokemon is because a lot of coaches, and we talked about this last week, will scarf things that are in the 70 to 90 range.
Right.
Crocodile.
They'll be putting, you'll give your scarf to Crocodile, or in my case, I was fearing a scarf to Nihilego or Nihilego or whatever that Ultra Beast is, Jellyfish.
Yeah.
I was fearing a scarf to Jellyfish. And running a fast scarfer is something that I think a lot of coaches don't expect sometimes.
Right.
They'll send in their own scarfer to revenge kill, not realizing that they're not faster.
Yeah.
You can catch people off guard that way. And there's something really powerful about having the guarantee in the back of your head
that you'll be able to outspeed anything.
Yeah. You have the fastest mon on the field. If you took your highest base speed tier, threw a scarf on it, and it was faster than anything on their team.
Yeah.
You have it guaranteed.
Well, and that's like when I built against Nadia, the only thing that she had that outsped my Latios was Tornadus. And I just popped a choice scarf on my Latios, and I was faster than the Tornadus and definitively faster than the rest of her team. And that was actually pretty useful in a lot of those occasions.
A scarf on a mon that's also very fast can give you other EVs you crucially need. In a different league, in the AADL, I think, I had Cryogonal, because that's kind of where I'm getting it now. I was like, oh, that thing worked for me in the other league. But I had 0 speed EVs, but I scarfed it and gave it like, I think it was like Ice Beam, Shadow Ball, Flash Cannon, just that weird set. But that way I could outspeed as fast as Mon still with no speed investment and still have enough bulk to live a Fire Blast.
Yeah,
that's dope.
You may be wondering why Clutch hasn't chimed in yet. He had some issues with his CPU like right after we started, so
he's very shy, actually.
Yeah, hopefully he'll be back on pretty quick here. I just saw him jump back online, so hopefully he'll jump back in here. I do think we've still got some time for this topic. So another thing, um, and this goes, I guess this is almost specifically more for bulkier teams, since that's what I know. Knowing where to put your bulk is important with bulky teams. Do you, and that really comes down to looking at your opposing team's sweepers and knowing, like, for example, let's say you have an opposing team that has Embor. We'll use Embor as an example, and Embor can be, I think it can be built either. Like
it can be physical or special.
Yeah, it can be built either, and sometimes it's run as a mixed. So you're not gonna want to run like a physically, like let's say they also have Blastoise, which is usually a special attacker. If it's being used to attack at all, right? So if say they have that team, if you have an Amoonguss on your team or like a Ferrothorn, but more probably an Amoonguss, you don't need to, like, you need to build for what you're going to wall, basically. What you're planning on walling is what I'm trying to get at here in my own roundabout way. So if you're using, like, if you're using,
move spot.
Yeah. Like if the stuff that you can wall really well normally is special attackers, then you want to put the bulk of your wall's bulk into special attack. Or into special defense. But yeah. And it's kind of, it's knowing where to shift your bulk to wall most effectively. Because we've talked about it already, situations where we didn't anticipate a physical attacker or a sweeper. And that's why Chansey and Blissey, I think, will always have a place on bulk teams. Because even though they only have one weakness, they only have one weakness.
And I think that by virtue of having a massive special defense stat, Chansey and Blissey are both excellent, like, catch-all walls.
Yes, and that's what
same
they
with,
are.
Like, same with Porygon too, right?
And I would even venture to say that Ferrothorn falls into this category as well, because right, and the clutch returns, and so and I think Ferrothorn actually falls into the catch-all wall category as well, because it's got such good natural bulk in both special defense and defense that if you run the right EVs, you can wall anything that it isn't weak to.
Yeah.
Porygon 2, even without an EV Light, it's still a monster. I think I can't remember which week it was. I got knocked off. I was like, oh, well, Porygon 2 is gone.
Right.
I could still wall the thing I was in on. I mean, I was getting hit with stab moves, neutral, and I could still take 2. It's like, oh gosh, Porygon 2 is bulky. We have base 90 defense, 95 special defense. With Eviolite, that's just insane. That's 135 defense and like 137.
You can EV on P2 for like absolutely ridiculous numbers.
Yeah.
And it's just like it takes it easily. Oh, I need to recover off now and be just fine.
And that's why having a really good mixed defender can sometimes be really beneficial to you, because if
I've been using Reuniclus, kind of like,
well, because say if someone
don't mention that thing here.
Well, say if someone does like bring out something that you thought was going to be like, I'll use Como as an example because it's just most fresh in my mind, but you think it's going to be special, your special wall suddenly just gets blown out by this thing. You need something to wall it. And, you know, I wouldn't pick Chansey for the role, but like Reuniclus would be able to wall it, provided it's got the bulk in the right spot for it if you're using it as a catch-all wall. Ferrothorn probably wouldn't because it's got the fighting weakness. Toxapex could. Toxapex also has really good mixed bulk. Yep. And you would be able to halt the momentum is the point here. Because when you're playing on a bulkier team, you kind of have to concede the fact that your opponent's going to be able to put more offensive pressure on you. And what you have to turn the game into when you're playing a bulky team is you have to turn the game from who has the most offensive pressure to who uses their offensive pressure most effectively.
Oh yes, and that's.
I think if there's something you can't check like at all, like, oh man, I cannot switch into this, then you don't need to build something that can at least attempt to. There's no point.
Yeah, exactly.
There's absolutely no point. Like I can't check this, but like, I'm gonna put this EV in there. I'm gonna run max defense, just maybe in the off chance I catch him. No, there's no reason to.
That's what I did against Tornadus against Nadia. I literally offered up one of my mons as a sacrifice so Tornadus could nuke it, and then I just rolled in with choice scarfed Latios, because
You
that's
just
the
need to
other
have a
thing.
way to consistently revenge
Right.
it, and
Yeah.
eventually you will. If you, that way, if you get down to a one-on-one situation, you can beat it offensively
Right.
instead of trying to beat it defensively.
And that's why
I learned that early on.
And that's why pure stall teams don't work so well in Draft League, because of the fact that it's really easy to.
It's a momentum sponge.
It's really easy to, because if you have no way to gain any offensive pressure, you're going to be stuck there, tanking shots until you die, and you will die, probably.
Exactly. I think that's
if someone preps the right team on. If you bring the right team on against a stall team, you literally can. It's an easy 6-0 because most stall is just so passive.
Right.
That hits kind of close to home for some people here.
Yeah. Well, I mean.
Hey, now. Well, I think that was the thing, is that for me playing, I think another important thing, real quick, and I can say this, talking about playing a few stall-ish teams in this league, is like knowing where to bring a really, really nice substitute.
Right.
Because I brought substitute Gyarados to our mine and Cossacks battle, knowing that Scizor couldn't break a sub, and knowing that Amoonguss couldn't break a sub based on how I EV'd it. And I was just like, I'm getting this thing in on something, and I'm going for as many Dragon Dances as he'll let me. Right. And that was like that was a winning strategy. And I think that also go ahead, Clutch.
That's how I was with a Reuniclus against Adam, because I think he might have expected a regular call my Reuniclus, when I brought the sub out, he just.
Well, and Mimikyu did the same thing to me like 2 weeks later.
Sub's like a really nice move to have, because like.
Well, that's part of why I picked up Volcarona, because Volcarona is a very valid sub user, and also hits hard enough against enough things that it can break subs really easy.
For sure.
A well-predicted sub is always a free turn.
Yeah, Nadia almost beat me week 1 because she subbed on my double out with her Gengar. If it wasn't for the paralysis, I would have lost right there.
Yep.
But I think that's I think another thing and here's actually let's discuss this a little bit, because I was about to make a point, but actually I think that this could be debated. What do you think is more important in building a team? I have an opinion on this, but I want to know what you guys think. What's more important? Is it about you having a plan with the team, or is it about you having a counter to the opponent?
I think having a good game plan is the game plan.
It's definitely.
You have a way to take down certain threats.
I think honestly it's more of
you can have counters that don't synergize well. That's the only issue. If you have 6 mons that perfectly counter your opponent's 6 mon team, but they all don't.
Like and it goes back to my stall team where, like, I had mons that, like, against Pack in week 1, I had like individual mons that could take down his individual mons. Right? Where but the problem was there was no synergies at all. So I got summarily picked apart piece by piece. And so I honestly think it's more of a mix of both. I don't think it's one or the other. I think because like we already talked about the pitfall of trying to plan to counter everything your opponent could possibly do. It won't work. So just planning to counter things doesn't work.
I think if you know you're really weak to something, that could,
and that's
potentially easy to be brought, and having a game plan to build.
Right.
Hey, if they go this, I can go here, do that, and I can get it in range of this. Or I can
and usually countering certain threats falls into your game plan. That's part of the game plan. It's not usually exclusive.
Yeah. And I think that that's another important thing to be doing when you're making your game plan. And this is something that I'm going to mention a couple points about it as well. You should be looking at your biggest threats and thinking of what's your contingency plan. If you've got to switch in, you've got to have it logged in your head that, like, as soon as I see this Pokemon on the field, I know my plan.
Well, and that's why I use the method that I used, because if I know what I can check, if I know what I can wall, I know what the switch-ins are and aren't.
Yeah, for sure.
You can play more comfortably instead of having to take.
Yeah, and there were times where I did run damage counts.
Seconds
Right. And there were times where I did have to run a couple damage calcs during the battle because she brought stuff I didn't expect, but largely my predictions shook out about as I expected them to. The things I expected to walled. The things I didn't like the things I expected to checked. And that, it went about as I expected it to. The only thing I will say that I didn't expect to work nearly as well as it did was the Quagsire versus Mega Gardevoir. Because but I think it's that the only reason that actually worked as well as it did was because Nadia forgot that Quagsire had Unaware. And if she had remembered, she wouldn't have tried to Calm Mind. She would have just tried to nuke it as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And I think that that's the virtue of the way that you prep and bringing certain mons is just that, especially in league play, like there's what, 700 Pokemon at this point? 800,
there's like 800.
Ridiculous
There's
number.
close to 900.
800,
Nobody-
I think it's 801. It's 801.
Yeah. Like everybody every now and then is going to forget what mons carry Unaware, or what mons carry this ability or that ability, or what has this coverage.
Right.
And
well, you're gonna go, oh, and then that's when you go, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. Or, oh, that really sucks for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. There's always.
I will always applaud good prep. Like I'll
Yeah.
go, I'll get beat. I go, oh, that was really cool.
Well, that was the thing with the Slurpuff thing, because I hadn't expected that, and I was like, this is a close game. I did not think about that. Good, like GG. That's all I can say.
Disregarding different forms, there are 807 Pokemon with Zero Aura included.
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
I think a last note here for things that I'm just really kind of going down the list of pitfalls that I've had in team prep.
Mhm.
One that I feel like I experienced this week a little bit was over fixation on a single set being a problem.
Right.
Like for me,
Was that on top of my Steelo?
a little bit. I think I fixated on that too much because for a little bit of background, I played Clutch in a mock battle this week. He ran an automized Celesteela, and I basically just gave it a single free turn. I switched my Deancey out of it. It automized, and what I thought was a game that was working in my favor. I mean, I think it was 4-4 at the time, and I felt like I had the momentum. It went from 4-4 to 0-4.
It was close.
Yeah, it was close up till that point, and then Steela just ran through my team. And like I could have, and the thing that it really did to me, I don't know, it kind of shook my confidence a little bit. I was just like, man, I wasn't prepped for that at all. And not only that, but like when it came time to play the battle, I knew pretty well when he switched in his Celesteela. He switched it in on my DNC as I was going for a Diamond Storm. I saw the damage it did. I knew that it was a defensive Steela after that. And I still made the play that I would have against an automized Steela because I was so fixated on that being a problem. And so like, I think sometimes you fixate most on the things that you're worried about. And I mean, we talk about this in other fields like engineering and stuff where like, if you become too fixated on one problem and you're convinced that it's the thing that's going to break you or the thing that's wrong, you miss the 99 other things that could be going on.
Right. And
I think that's a pitfall of mock battles as well. Because like the person who you're mocking against could bring this really great fire set and they can have, they're not necessarily going to bring that. And you need, and if you fixate, oh, what if they bring this exact same set? Well, you don't know.
When I was prepping, I was pretending to be meta. I brought I think it was Power Herb. Was it Freeze Burn?
No, that's
On Cure and Black. Yeah. Free Shock. I think it was Free Shock or Freeze Burn. One of the two. But I had a Power Herb that. I can't remember who I was mocking against, but I played that set. It was so much fun. But of course, it wasn't going to come. But I was having it just in case this comes. Got to be prepped for it.
Well, and like because I ran a couple mocks as that same team against Clutch, and I brought the first thing I brought was
Flameward Facade.
Yeah, Flameward Facade Kyurem Black.
Oh jeez. It will always come back around to this.
Oh yeah.
I mean, honestly, we need Andrew to run.
That's become a meme.
Facade Kecleon, and then we can like come full circle on our like memes.
We can die happy.
That like If this ever gets big enough, if this podcast ever gets big enough to where we merchandise, we definitely need a T-shirt that just says "Flame Orb Facade X."
That thing is a legend. My God.
I half expect Santoro to run Flame Orb Facade Snorlax at least once.
Please do
I hope he
it.
does. I think his playoff race is getting really tight though, so I'm not sure if he's quite in a position.
No, yeah.
Like, every playoff race right now is completely and utterly tight. Like, no one is safe.
Yeah.
I mean, Neek might be the safest right now. I think Neek is the safest.
And I know I said, and this actually will transition now to our RDL topic since we seem to be trending in that direction, and this seems about the right time to do it. We're going to save the divisional playoff race for next week. We were going to do it again this week, but I think we'll wait till next week, actually, because it's
a good week also because division rematches start next week. It's a great time to start
that would, I think that's a much more appropriate time to start. Now, what we do want to talk about real quick, we'll just touch on this real quick. Sam's going to give us the report on the current progress for All-Star voting.
Yes, I'm happy about this.
Crew.
Okay, I'm gonna have to try and cover this fairly quickly because I made up a little Excel sheet to total up all of our votes. Week 1 and week 2 are in. If you remember from last week, week 1 we had 13 out of 16 coaches reporting. This week we had 17 of 16 coaches reporting,
which is impressive.
One double entry. And I think I'll throw it in there that. If people vote twice, I just delete the second response. I have the power to do that. I'm Mark Zuckerberg up here.
Power within.
Yeah. So,
are we gonna have a congressional hearing for you as well?
Yeah. And then people are gonna make memes about my smile. It's gonna suck super bad.
You're gonna come.
So, here's the thing. What I think I'm doing this week, I think I am going to, for both conferences, I am going to appoint the 2 largest vote getters from week 1 and 2 as kind of early access preview all-stars in both conferences.
I think that's good, so that way we can get votes for other members in as well. So not everyone's going for Snorlax, Beyond, and Krook.
Yeah, for sure.
And regular.
Yeah, we've got to. So, and the issue, of course, is in the Moon Conference we have really 4 standouts. And I didn't really want to appoint all of them immediately. I wanted to appoint the same amount in both conferences. Sun has 2 obvious standouts. And so what I'm doing is I think I'm going to appoint 1 tier 4, tier 5 in both conferences, and then the largest vote getter in the tier 1 through tier 3 category, or the wild card bunch. And so that means that there will still be 2 of the big vote getters in the Moon Conference. But given that people have 4 votes, they can only cast 2 of them to those things. So what I'm hoping to get from that is a little bit of a less of a saturation effect where, there's like 4 Pokemon that everyone's voting for, and then other runner-ups are getting like a total of 5 votes in a week. But anyways, so to that note, what I'm going to do is announce the 2 early All-Stars for both conferences real quick. I don't think anyone will be too surprised. But then I want to talk real quick about the runner-ups to those, the ones that are going to be selected for week 3. Is everyone good with that?
Yep,
I'm good.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to start off with the Sun Conference, where our 2 early appointees who are being taken off voting because they're already all-stars are Snorlax and Rhyperior.
Wow. Surprise.
Surprise. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've all said enough about Snorlax and talked about it a lot. And we've all talked about Rhyperior quite a bit, which is, it's doing a lot of work. It's been a very, very productive tier 4 for Michael. And so they're both fairly deserving all-stars. After that, we have a couple real big vote getters. I think Latios is sitting at 7 votes, Zygarde 50 at 8, Milotic's sitting at 8 as well. Tapu Bulu's at 8, and Jellicent is at 7.
Fair.
Yeah, Jellicent.
Those are fair.
Yeah, Jellicent really climbed. Some things that are kind of tailing and that are on the up and up are Mega Pincer, which snagged a whole bunch of votes this week. Snagging slightly more votes than Mega Pincer this week, though, was, or no, sorry, the same amount, was Staraptor, also from the same team. I mean, I think that Brave Bird Everything does kind of deserve to be represented. And I absolutely think that one of Mega Pincer or Staraptor should be making this team.
Yeah, I think it'd be unjust for the Sun Conference All-Stars to not have one Brave Bird on there.
Yeah, or at least I think that honestly, it's just that the Detroit Dracos deserve to be represented. They're one of the better coaches and one of the better teams in this league. So, and I'm not just saying that because I got beat by them yesterday.
You got
I mean, I faced them this week in the Battle of Detroit, so we'll see how that goes.
You gotta get him, man. So, anyways, let's step over to the Moon Conference real quick. This is the one that had the 4 appointees that, 4 kind of large vote getters. And this race actually is like surprisingly close for who is going to be the early appointee. But once again, to no one's surprise, the 2 early appointees are Crocodile and Kecleon.
The 2Ks.
Wow.
The Lizard team will survive.
Dude, and
the Lizards.
yeah, so, dude, here's the thing though, is that Kieran Black was 1 vote behind Crook after this week.
Kieran
Hello?
Black's a monster.
Yeah, dude.
Hello, where's regular Kira at?
Where's regular Kieran at? Maybe he's gonna snag a whole bunch of week 3 votes. Who knows?
Yeah,
Hashtag vote for Kieran.
Third in the MVP standings.
Hashtag Draco Justice.
Hashtag Draco Justice.
Vote for the half dragon.
Mimikyu needs some justice too. It's not getting a whole lot of votes. And of course,
yeah.
I mean, we've already mentioned the runners up to Crocodile and Kecleon being appointed earlier are Kieran Black and, of course, Megalodios, no question.
Yeah.
So those 2 are almost, I mean, at this point, with the amount of votes they have, both of them are basically guaranteed to be all-stars, unless nobody votes for them this week. And
No one vote for Kieran Black. Get the real Kieran in there.
So
Get OD Kiram.
OG Kieran.
Make Clutch happy.
Draco Justice.
Yeah. But speaking of things that might make Clutch happy, the runners-up beyond Megalodios and Kieran Black, there's a 3-way tie at 7 votes right now.
Reuniclus, come on.
Reuniclus is one of those.
Yeah.
The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah. So we've got the 3-way tie is with Alolan Ninetales, Reuniclus, and Victini.
Oh, hey, Victini's in there.
Yep. Victini's in the mix.
I didn't even vote for Victini this. I think I did Porygon 2 for mine.
Mm-hmm. And then right behind those are, and this data set is just so saturated because of the heavy vote getters in this group. But I mean, it's crazy to me that like we could have an all-star in this spot who potentially has like 7 votes or less after next week, after 3 weeks of voting. But things that are right on the tail of Victini, Reuniclus, and Alolan Ninetales are Terrakion and Tapu Koko. And then a couple other things that are drifting around at 2 or 3 votes. So, yeah.
I think that Victini being on top of Terrakion is a perfect example of the Week 13 match coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Oh man,
That would be so good.
I'm so hyped for that.
Oh,
You have no
I'm so
idea
hyped for it,
how hyped I am
too.
for that match. The division rematches are going to be so insane. It's like,
one thing that I
all
will
of them
say
are
about
playoffs.
one thing real quick I'll hop in and say about the Moon Conference is that the second tier 4, tier 5 slot is like very much up for grabs. So if you guys are listening and you're in the league and able to vote, cast 1 or 2 of your votes towards a tier 4 or a tier 5 that you think is deserving. Because
I would go with like Seismitoad, Regirock, Magmortar. I mean, maybe
Magmortar has been to 1 game. Magmortar has been to 1 game.
but it's an
all
awesome
season.
Pokemon.
It has done nothing.
my vote's going to Bronzong. I'll just throw that in the ring. I think Bronzong has been a really, really
Bronzong's
good
awesome.
mon. I think it's been a really good mon for Nadia. She's like, I mean, talking with her about how she's come around to like finding that she really enjoys using it. I mean,
I prepped
Yes,
so hard.
another convert to the
Levitate or
bulk.
Heat Proof is also a hard thing for my team. Do I
Yeah.
Earthquake it or do I V create it?
dude, she's gonna run Iron Ball heat proof on you and just roast you.
Trick. and then trick it.
Don't forget the trick.
Yeah.
I ran trick light clay against Santoro one time, just to trick a light clay to his ride on.
Oh, nice.
Season. And I ran like dual screens with. I ran dual screens like trick psychic, something like that. It was kind of fire.
So going from that, we're gonna be talking about season 3 discussion just opened up. So there's a lot of things that are being discussed right now. We're not gonna cover all of it because I think there's still kind of some shaking out as to what we need to tackle first as a league. The first thing that has come up that a lot of people have been discussing is Showdown or stay as Wi-Fi league. And there's been a lot of good arguments for either side. I think that right now everyone seems to be edging towards the Wi-Fi league.
Oh yeah, definitely.
At least for this next season. I think after that it really is going to come down to when the next Pokemon games release, because it has been confirmed those games are going to be for the Switch, and the last thing we want to do is like try and boot people from the league because they can't afford to pay $300 for a Switch.
To be fair, it wasn't even a doubt to be for the Switch. USUM had such trouble with the 3DS maxing out the software. There was no reason they're going to be like, nah, we can keep going.
Oh, yeah. 3DS. No, I kind of figured they were going to release it for the Switch, mainly because the Switch is kind of like, they're marketing it as both a portable device and as a...
The Switch is becoming their baby.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it because it's actually a good system. Like, from what I've seen anyway. I don't own one, but from what I've seen.
No, it's a good system. It plays really well. Surprisingly good battery. But I just haven't got around to... I haven't even got to Mario Odyssey yet. I've had it since it came out. I haven't even touched it.
So,
I just don't have the money. Hello.
Yeah, and that's what it's coming down to. So probably at least for because that game's not going to come out until way later in 2018. We're probably going to have, it's looking like maybe like 4 to 5 weeks of downtime, which I think is good. I think everyone needs, because after this season was long.
Yeah,
for sure. Man.
Without postseason, this season is almost 4 or 5 months long.
Yeah, 15 weeks is a long time. And that's not even including week 0 for prep and trades and all that.
Mm-hmm. So that's definitely something that, and in fact, the season length is something we're looking at changing for next season. There's been a lot of talk of reducing it to 12 weeks, which I actually think is much more manageable, and I think we should go with that.
Agreed.
I'm pretty sure the GBA has started after us, and they're about to go to the championship match. So.
Yeah.
Well, screw them and their view count. We can do whatever we want to.
Yeah. We don't have thousands of viewers to please. Yet. Guys, word of mouth, you can do it. We believe in you.
We're the nicest league.
We
care about the little guy.
We are
and also putting a huge workload on Pack and Michael.
We are a very like chill league, which is one of the things I like most about this league. That's actually something else. We're gonna be because the other thing with the 5-week downtime that I think will be good is it'll allow us to kind of figure out who wants to come back for a season 3. Like we got to figure out what our retention is going to be like in terms of coach retention, and then possibly find, depending on how many there are leaving. I don't think there's going to be that many coaches leaving, to be honest.
I think we may have a few, but if there's any openings, we got Dominator may pop in. We have, I think Whitehawk hopefully will stay around. I feel bad for both he and Ballistic picked up rough teams. And Whitehawk had a packed schedule for Whitehawk. I felt bad against him. I got the freeze. I was like, oh man, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think. Well, right now, I'm not going to speak for anybody. I think that I would be willing to bet that Whitehawk and Ballistic would probably stick around for another season. Mainly because they seem to be
Ballistic, and I hope Whitehawk sticks around.
They seem to be chill people who are enjoying themselves in the league.
They're non-toxic humans, and it's like, hey, people are okay.
I would certainly be glad if they decided to stick around. I would very much like that, because
if you guys are listening, we love you.
Yeah, we're glad you joined the league.
Thank you for filling the voids that were left by other coaches.
Yes.
You filled the voids in the teams
and that's what I do want both of them to stick around, because I want to see what they can do with a team that they've drafted themselves and formulated like in their
play style.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm also hoping there's a void for Dominator, because I actually want to battle him, because he's been helping me since week 1, and it's like I want to have him have a team, and I actually want to battle him and see who would come out on top. Because we have some really, really weird team building methods. We'll go at a bunch of different teams, different cycles, and I really hope he joins so I can actually battle him. It'd be fun.
And we'll talk more on like that kind of stuff way later. But another thing that has come up is franchise picking and whether or not we should do it at all. And
I think if we do, it shouldn't be a high tier mod
well,
or mega.
I think, well, honestly, I think that the best way that I saw someone saying we should handle it, I think it was Pack who suggested it, which is just that it takes up whatever we pick takes up one of our free slots instead of one of our roster slots.
I agree.
Because that way you're locking yourself into like if you're gonna free pick your tier or franchise pick your tier 1, like that's cool, but now you're down 180 free slot points right off the bat.
I'm gonna franchise Armaldo, all one match that it had.
To be fair, I honestly think that even if we did franchise picking, and even if we did unrestricted franchise picking without megas, of course, but like, even if we did like general like unrestricted franchise picking, I'd be willing to bet a lot of people would be getting like mid tier to low tier mons. I don't think, because like I could tell you right now,
mons just do things well.
like I would probably consider franchise picking Quagsire, considering how much I enjoy using it right now.
Yes, Bill.
And Amoonguss is definitely on my list if I had to choose.
Surprisingly, Krook is not on my list to franchise.
Well,
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
I love Krook so much, but I'm sorry, Marv. It's getting so old. I would probably do P2, P2 Lucario or Regirock.
I'm just against franchising in general, to be fully honest. I don't
Yeah,
like
Man,
it.
Yeah,
I love Marv.
well-
I can't do 2 seasons back to back with Marv.
I
I
think,
think it ruins the diversity potential of drafting a new team.
and that's fair. And
Like,
I also
not all
think it
Not all mons fit on a team. It's just
Yeah, I get it. That's kind of limited to, well, I got to build around this now. I do agree with that, but I think it should. Maybe our idea for franchise would be, well, okay, these mons can't be drafted past round 2. Past 2, they're immune unless the coach wants to draft them for 2 or 3 rounds, and after those rounds, they go back on the market.
I think another way that we could do things is rather than doing the free point system, to do something like, say, you can franchise pick something, but it would move you back in the draft order for the first round. It would essentially
I
function as
gotcha.
your first pick.
yeah.
And
I
of
think
course,
that'd be good. I
that
think either that or just like the slots where it's like, okay,
Right.
for if I franchise quote unquote like Porygon 2 or something,
the
for the first 3 or 4
one-
turns it's immune, and then after that it's free to be picked up from anyone.
The one other method that I saw that someone posted that gained a little bit of traction was Adamant suggested a method where everyone, you take each team and everyone votes on one Pokemon on each team that can't be franchise picked by that coach. I don't like that system personally because I think I don't like systems where everyone is making team building decisions for me. And that's what that smacks
I
of.
want it really successful
No, I agree with
for my
that.
team.
Because I mean, let's say someone with Storm, everyone's like, no, you can't redraft Landers T, but she wants to do it, let her draft Landers T. And same with like
Well,
excessive.
it's not redrafting. It's franchise
Well,
picking.
I know, but okay, same thing. Well, I mean, you're getting them back
Yeah.
on your team. That's the way I meant it. But I mean, I think if you're gonna do franchise, it shouldn't be at the will of other coaches. It should be your
Yeah.
team choice. You do what you want. And if you want to redraft your tier 1 and build around that again, go for it. If you want to just do a lower tier, go for it. But I don't think there should be other coaches being like, no, you cannot redraft Terrakion or such.
Honestly, though, currently, I'm at the point where I'm just leaning towards no franchise picking because it's so much simpler at that point.
It's just complicated, and if you get new
Well,
coaches, they go,
and I
"Oh,
feel
I
like,
want that."
and we've got. I think the main reason I'm leaning towards it is because there really is no consensus as to how we should handle franchise picking if we do it, and because
Yeah.
there
We
is
can
no
always just do a vote for it, though.
consensus. Well, yeah, but I think
Then
the
they
vote.
don't- but
I
then
think
some
the
people
thing
get
is,
left.
if we voted for all the different methods and also had no franchise picking would win. Because already there's multiple people who have said
Well, okay,
we should
I think
just
what we
not
should
do
do
it.
is have just a yes or a no vote, and then if the no wins, and if the yes
well,
wins,
and we
then
probably
should
will, because we're gonna do a rules discussion, much like we did for last season. For those of you,
And yeah,
Yeah.
for new
Ooh.
coaches, what you gotta do is you gotta take them aside, sit them down, and just tell them, "Suck it."
The
No.
best.
That's not.
Well,
I'm
what,
kidding.
What,
I'm
what,
kidding,
no,
but-
because
It's in the love.
what we did last season before we started the season, like a couple weeks before we started the season, we sat down with as many coaches as we could get together, and we hashed out like tier changes, all that stuff. We went through it all, and it took a couple hours, but it was worth it because it was we got a very stable set of rules. Most of the primary concerns were in fact, I pretty much all of them were taken care of to the satisfaction of pretty much the entire league. I don't think there was anyone who voiced dissent with the decisions. And then we had the other coaches who weren't there weigh in real quick on each of those things. Like we said, here's the decisions that we made in the chat. Now, if anyone has any like vocalizations against this, speak up now, forever hold your peace kind of thing. And we're definitely going to do that again because that worked really well. And we got a consensus without like causing a bunch of, there was no one unilaterally saying this is what we're doing. Anyone who doesn't like it can just F off and yeah.
Because the league just in general is kind of like really knowledgeable and like we want to make things work,
right?
And we don't get toxic if our way isn't the way because we
right.
understand like that makes
I
sense.
can also totally see how franchise picking would completely disadvantage new coaches because the ones who have been here basically skip their last round of their draft because they're the free picks. So they basically get, if we're doing the Z crystals, like they get 11 drafts and the new coaches get 12. And so they can start getting their lower tier picks sooner than the other coaches.
Well, I mean, the thing is though, we're probably like I understood very well why we didn't do it last season, like or this season going into it.
We doubled the season, like we
But
doubled the season.
I don't think we're gonna go. We're not going any bigger than 16 teams. 16 teams is
we're not doing 32.
Well,
25, 24.
Like Mike and Pac have had a hard enough time managing all the stuff for 16 teams. Like, depending on what our retention rate is like, if anything, we're probably gonna shrink. If say if 4 coaches leave, we're probably not gonna try and fill those slots, or at least I'm considering. Like, I would say that's something we should at least consider is not trying to find anyone to fill those slots and just drop down to a 12-team league. If for no other reason than easier bookkeeping,
easier bookkeeping, and also it would make the shrunk schedule
it would
still allow
much more suitable.
Yeah,
more suited.
Right, and you could still do the conferences and divisions too because it's still divisible by 4.
Exactly,
and it's still manageable, and so that those are all things that we're considering. We'll see how that goes. Let's move on to our Mon of the Week, which is a very versatile Mon. And we were talking about coverage. Well, what about a Mon that has all of the coverage?
With literally no downside.
Namely Mew. Mew is a base 100 legendary, and there's a few different base 100 legendaries. Yeah. Like you have the base 100 legendaries. I think it's Jirachi, Manaphy, Celebi, Shaman, right?
Oh, Victini.
Oh, Victini as well.
Come on, Valor. How did I forget you?
And so you got and Mew is also in there. Mew is the first of them, and Mew has access to all of the moves. I'm pretty sure, doesn't it?
Every TM in the game.
Every TM in the
game.
You
can learn every TM, not every move, but everything
that can be.
Yes.
Anything by TM or tutor is available to Mew.
Right. And so that gives it ridiculous versatility because
I think every move but like Draco essentially.
Yeah. And that's fine because it's still got an absurdly deep move pool with base 100 stats. You can run it so many different ways. And it's mono psychic type. It's just psychic type. Or no.
The real issue with Mew is like it doesn't hit quite hard enough.
Right. Well, and that's I would say a struggle for a lot of the base 100s though.
Depends on your moveset though.
Yeah, it does.
The thing with
I don't think anyone's gonna doubt Victini hits pretty hard.
That's true.
That's because it has access to the most broken move and there's really high base power moves in Blue Flare, Bolt Strike, and V Create. Mew doesn't have that option.
Right.
Yep.
It has to rely on 100 base power moves.
You
Like,
do have
Right.
Muni
100
MC though.
Yeah.
but that's banned in most league formats because Psychic Terrain
It's
is
banned in our
actually
format.
broken. It's
Um,
banned in a
Sorry about
lot
that.
of formats.
so,
It doesn't just hit quite
Right.
hard enough.
right. And so usually that means Mew is relegated to kind of like it's glue. Mew is like the highest tier glue because
It shouldn't be though.
it shouldn't be, but
That's the problem.
It's the problem is
That's
what it ends
that's
up. That's where it usually ends up.
because Mew requires really specific draft to let Mew just do whatever it wants.
Right.
You have to have every role filled on your other 10 picks,
Well, and that's
and then
why
you have a Mew.
right, and that's why I think with Mew it usually ends up a first round pick or it's not picked at all. Or it's picked late. Like it's either a first round pick or it's a late round pick. Cuz you're either building
You
around it
have to know
or
what you're doing.
you're either building around it or you're picking it up as glue.
Yep.
As like the
You can
most
cover any role though. You can do
well
rocks,
that's why it's glue.
physical, special, bulky wall,
Right.
magic coat, all that stuff.
Well, and that's why I'm saying it's like it gets picked as low tier,
Oh,
like or
100%.
it gets picked as glue because it
It's
can
hard to build a team around a mon that can do anything though. It's
Because
more
you
often
need
glue
to
than
be
it's not.
able.
right.
The thing is, it's like either every dimension or it's one dimension, and it's gonna be this defogger, or it's gonna be my rocker, or it's gonna be my
Right.
status, or it's gonna be my stall breaker.
Right.
Or otherwise, it's just nothing.
And and we're not saying it's bad. We're just saying it's awkward to use because of its
But it,
versatility and its
Yeah,
weird
it's very
like
situational depending on the match.
but
What you bring.
used and drafted properly, it's easily the best one in the format.
oh
But
yeah.
if not, it's one of the worst in the format.
I would almost say using Mew is like when you're talking like other competitive games like Overwatch and stuff like that, you have certain like heroes or certain characters that are what are called high skill cap. So those are characters that when they're used to their utmost potential by someone who knows what they're doing, they ruin your average group of players. They're top tier.
Yes.
Mew is a high skill cap Pokemon where a lot of people can use Mew reasonably effectively, not stand out effectively. A lot of people use Mew badly, but there's a few people who can use Mew to its utmost potential, and those when
You
it's
can
being
run
used
all the sets.
and when it's being used to its utmost potential on a team that can support it, it is a terrifying mon.
Yeah, I think that if I
Mew
can hop
requires
in.
a lot.
Okay, yeah, go
prep.
for it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
fine.
Mew requires so much prep on the
Yeah.
coach's end because you have to like run specific sets. You need to be able to catch things, and your team needs to be designed for Mew to catch those things for your team.
Or you bring Ditto.
You can run Transform Mew. You can run Transform Mew if you really needed it to. I need a Revenge Killer. Run Transform.
Yeah, I think that its strength definitely comes in the fact that it's very, very versatile.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can say that all day, but the thing is that, I mean, I played against Mew a week ago, and I think that the fact that it does have that well-roundedness to it, and especially I think that one thing that gets kind of underestimated is its speed stat. You know,
Right.
at 100, base 100 is really good.
Especially in
think that-
draft league.
It's also
Yeah,
really
in
bad.
League, it's fantastic. The thing is, like for me last week, I was part of the reason that I lost was because Andrew, the guy I was playing against, bluffed Scarf so well with his Mew. You know, and I mean, you can really with Mew, you can fake people out. You can
Right.
play a set something like it's a just a defogger, play something like it's just a rocker for a second, and completely turn that around on them at the last second. And because you have that massive move pool to your advantage, and also such a balanced set of stats, you can bring something that they won't see coming.
Well, and another thing to point out with Mew is because of that base 100 stats and its extreme versatility, it's very good at countering other base 100 Pokemon. I think.
Elaborate.
Well, because like, let's say you have a team and you have Mew on your team and you're running it against a team that has Manaphy, and let's say you don't really have anything on your team that can beat Manaphy except Mew. You can run Mew against what you can reasonably assume the Manaphy set's going to be with a really good amount of effectiveness because they both have the same base stats. And like what is Manaphy probably going to do? Most of the time it's probably going to Tail Glow and try to sweep you with Tail Glow. So if you run something on, like if you run Mew as like a really hard-hitting wall breaker, or something that can do a lot of single target damage with a lot of offensive pressure, and just slap Thunderbolt on it, and just roll that in there against Manaphy.
I agree. I think Mew probably the verse of the mythical. Oh, I think Celebi's probably the least. Maybe Manaphy. I think for sure, View's number one, Guest Victini, Celebi and Manaphy both have very, very niche usages.
Yeah.
I think is the best. I would go over Victini in terms of Pixies. I would go Mew over Victini.
Manaphy is the furthest thing from niche, but I'll get back to that later.
Yeah.
The problem with Mew is that it doesn't get stab on anything but Psychic, which is
But it gets Psy Shock.
Obviously, but that's Psychic. Zen Headbutt. But the problem is that when you're looking at Pixie Pokemon, the only thing Mew has is that move pool. All of the other ones have these high base power moves, or Jirachi has the utility and it has Serene Grace. Celebi outside of like Celebi, and because Shaman gets Seed Flare, Victini gets V Create, Manaphy gets Tail Glow, which is the most busted move in the game.
Celebi also is a very effective wall. Celebi is probably the
Celebi's solid.
Except his U-turners though.
Almost every Pixie outside of Shaman, I think, gets U-turn.
Well, but and Mew's also weak to U-turn as well, though. Like, because it's Psychic type.
Celebi's very weak to U-turn. Celebi is very weak to U-turn.
Yeah, that's true.
The Green Onion can't take it.
Nope. But it still makes a pretty good defensive core with, like...
If you really need it to be defensive.
Yeah.
Also, Mew does get more stab than the just Psychic attacks. It gets stab rest, lest we not forget.
Oh, heavens.
Boost that HP to all the way up to 100% stab.
I mean, you can run like a pseudo Crocune set on that thing.
You can run a pseudo Crocune set on like anything.
Yeah, that's true. But you could run it. I would imagine in Draft League, if you wanted to, you could probably run it effectively.
You could probably. Yeah, because it's just that fat.
Yeah, it's got those base 100 stats, which allows it to, and it's got a decent defensive typing. Psychic isn't bad for defense. Mono Psychic.
Your Psychic is a solid, because you get really good mono defenses.
Well-prepped Mew can also single-handedly wall entire teams.
Now that's true, but the thing you're running the risk of, it depends on the team you're facing. Because if the team you're facing has a really good physical attacker and a really good special attacker, both that have stab moves that are super effective against Mew, running mixed bulk isn't going to save you, because it's base 100, but its bulk isn't high enough usually to tank a wall breaking hit from a stab move that's super effective. Like if you had like a Volcarona and like a Mega Sharpedo on a team, yeah, right, and it wouldn't even need to quiver dance it either.
No, you could run like Scarf Volcarona, which is a
right,
set, by the way.
And like you have Mega Sharpedo. I mean, it hits so hard with Crunch, like
and Strong Jaw, yeah. Strong Jaw's a busting ability.
In situations like that, not necessarily that specific situation, because Bisharp could easily fill in the role for that too. Like, you're gonna end up in the situation where you're gonna have to choose which of those two you're going to be able to effectively tank a hit from.
Yeah.
Like you can't try to do mixed bulk if the other team has two high offensive basically two wall breakers that are super effective.
That's another thing with the base 100s. It's not great necessarily bulk, but it's also not terrible.
Right.
Because it's really weird because it doesn't quite hit hard enough. It doesn't quite take hits well enough, but it needs that team support.
Well, and it's
It-
it's like what Sam said earlier. It really comes down to one of the most effective ways to use Mew is to bluff one set when you're really running a different set.
Mhm.
Because because when you take it against someone, even in draft league, there's probably at least 2 or 3 viable sets you can run on Mew against any given team. So those teams are going to have to consider like
those sets.
and they can't necessarily plan for all of them effectively. So that if you can try. Now, I'm not saying you should go super hard or deep down the rabbit hole in this, but think about like what of the 3 sets you could run, which is the most effective against them, and instead of running that set, run the second most effective set. They'll probably plan for the first set, and the second set might be able to like come in, under the radar and take them out.
I mean, to the extent that they can plan for Mew at all.
Right, exactly. And to be fair, some people just won't bother trying to plan for Mew because of just how difficult it
They
is.
just have to, you just can't. Sometimes you just don't bring it good defensive check to Mew, and you try to beat it offensively. Because if
Right.
you're running offensive Mew isn't necessarily bulky.
Right. Well,
So you can have something that can come in and click a button.
Well, and like, let's say, like, if I was taking my team right now as it is, I would bring both Sharpedo and I would bring Sharpedo and Volcarona for the reason I mentioned earlier.
Fair enough.
Because even though like Sharpedo's offense like on its own isn't like super great, Stab Crunch still gonna do a lot of damage. And then, I got Buginium Z, so like Savage Spin Out, that's gonna one-shot Mew.
Any Mew.
Any Mew, exactly.
It doesn't matter what kind of Mew is.
Right. And even if they
What
bait
about a
the Savage
transformed
Spin Out.
Mew?
Oh, I mean,
Is it still Mew at that point?
See, now you're just trying to fuck with us.
Maybe.
So what it boils down to is Mew is a hard Pokemon to talk about because it's a hard mod to plan for.
You can talk about a Mew set, any Mew set, for hours because like, oh, it can run this or it can run this. There's literally no end to the sets you can run.
Infinite possibility, but it's also potentially no possibility.
Right.
Yeah.
It's on a tipping point.
And I think that the fact that you can, because of its even stat distribution, you can tech EV it really well.
Yeah.
That's underrated too.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's that ability to tech EV, the versatility of the move pool, and the base 100 stats that keep it at tier 1. Because if even one of those stats wasn't base 100 and was lower than that, it probably would be borderline at best. Like, that thing is like suddenly that tilts it towards tier 2.
But if you give it 10 extra spat points, it's broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's literally probably the best definition of a true borderline mon. It's teetering so close to that tier 2 edge, but it's just a little too good for tier 2. And
but
just
if you see someone use it well, it's completely the best mon on the format.
yeah, unquestionably.
It's so hard to deal with.
Right.
To be fair, that can go for a lot of things. Rhyperior was topping the charts for a while for kills.
But right? But that's because Rhyperior has been catching people. Now that you see it's starting to drop a little bit more, and you see things start to continue to rise up.
Yeah, I get it. I guess Mew definitely could fit in tier 2, but just because how versatile it is, how well it can be, it needs to be tier 1.
Exactly, and that's what I was getting at is like if its move pool wasn't as deep, if even one of its stats wasn't as good, if it had like a bad defensive typing, because that would be all it would take to teeter it down to tier 2. Like if it was say it was like let's say it was ice bug type. Exactly. That would drop it down to maybe tier 3. Like
Mew is ice type, tier 5 confirmed.
Well, Right.
Mew's an ice type to be kind of fire. Just to be
Yeah,
whatever.
Mew's an ice type, like as a mono ice type wouldn't be too bad, but like bug ice would. There's so many,
Oh,
so
gosh,
many
bug-
hundreds of
They
things
would
that
never
can.
make bug ice. That'd be horrible.
Right, but like that's what I'm saying though. Like if there was a
Rock,
bad defensive
ground,
type,
Oh, fire.
well, even you know what? Even if it were like steel rock type, it would probably drop it down to tier 2.
At least, because I mean, Stack Attack maybe doesn't even deserve to be tier 2.
Yeah, Stack
That attack
Attack.
is weird.
Yeah, we
Stack
might
Attack is
we
one of those
we
things that, like,
we might talk about Stack Attack one of these days. But
again, Stack Attack.
Stack
proper team
Attack
support-
is completely outclassed in tier 2. You've got Hydreigon, Mamoswine, MagneZOne,
Well,
Suicune, and then Stack
okay,
Attack.
this
Hold
is-
on, you're talking about entirely different mons.
Okay, fine. I'm
Not
sorry.
Stack Attack, yeah.
so
Like Stack Attack is completely weird, and if you get
Well,
in the trick room,
well, and we'll talk about
Killable.
that.
Killable.
We're definitely going to have Stack Attack as a mon of the week. Maybe not next week, but definitely one of these weeks it's going to happen. Just because Stack Attack is an interesting mon to talk about. But I think that about covers it for Mew. We went over like the main like weaknesses and strengths of Mew.
like the
And-
awkward parts of you.
Right, and just Mew, like I said, Mew is probably the purest definition of borderline in Pokemon, especially in Draft League.
100%. You can fill any role you need.
But at the same time, it's like I said, it's one of those things. And this is when I mentioned like with tier 1 mons, they either do one job really really well with a couple
Or
of
they
side
do
jobs that
A
they
lot
do,
of jobs kinda
Or they
well.
do
or they're like
all
Mew
the
where they
jobs
do
really
all
well.
of the jobs sort of well.
It's the exact opposite of Skarmory.
Right.
Skarmory's a lot of things though.
Skarmory
Skarmory
does
can do a lot of
yeah,
things.
because you can use it as a phaser, you can use it as a hazard setter, you can use it as like a physical sweeper if you're really desperate for one.
50 weak armor, boys.
So that about covers it for Mon of the Week. So we'll do divisional playoff race update next week for sure. As for the other subjects, well, we'll surprise you then. So until next week, have fun. Have a good draft if you're starting a draft this week, and
Wear
if
your
you're
seatbelt.
No hacks?
if you're starting a new league, good luck with that. We wish you all the best, and hopefully some of this stuff helps you out during your league. We'll see you next week. Peace out.